Hi, I'm Jeremy Strode and this is the fish shop. So the idea behind the fish shop was to give people a really fun environment to come and have a wonderful piece of fish that's been sourced in a sustainable way, i.e. local mackerel and whiting and all these fish that are in the season and there's plenty of. We use a little bit of farm fish as well, but to give it to them in a really fun environment with a bar with really great drinks, lots of margaritas and chilled beers and classic cocktails, and they can sit down on wooden stools and just enjoy what is essentially a wonderful product at a really good price. So my classic British heritage will obviously influence the menu. I've got my version of the fish and chips on, and we've got potato scallops, and we use Sarson's malt vinegar on the tables. Not surprisingly, one of the favourite things on the menu is my version of a classic fish and chips, lovely battered flathead, hand-cut chips, a good tartar sauce, and it's turned out to be one of our best sellers. So my version of the ultimate fish and chips. Sebago potatoes are wonderful for a perfect chip. Quite floury. You can use a slightly waxy potato like a Desiree or something like that, but I've just found that floury potatoes really, after steaming, really crisp up beautifully. We start by just scrubbing them. They're already scrubbed. We just trim them off to square them up a little bit, and we keep a little bit of the peel on for flavour and colour. You can boil them, and be very careful they're just cooked, but they can take on obviously water that you don't want. So we find that steaming them is really good for approximately 10 minutes until they're just cooked. So after you have steamed them, just leave them on a tray with a cloth to dry out, and then put them in. You can even leave them in your fridge for a few hours to dry out even further. The cool air in the fridge will dry them slightly. The less moisture, the better. So our oil is on about 180 degrees. We've got cottonseed oil in this. You can use vegetable oil, cottonseed oil, any basic frying oil. Triple cook's really good if you've got the time, but I think if you're making a really nice fish and chip at home, three stages is going a bit too far. You can get a really nice chip just cooking twice. So our classic garnish is a really nice tartar sauce. We make our own mayonnaise, obviously. You can use shop bought mayonnaise, it's fine. So to that, we're going to add some Spanish onion, just finely chopped, some dill pickle, not too fine. So when you're eating your fish and chips, you get that texture as well. And then capers. You use the brine capers, not the little salted ones, because you want the acid from the caper. It's also quite important just to squeeze out as much brine as you can. Like I said before, we don't want the mayonnaise to get too runny. And then just roughly chop those. As long as you squeeze everything dry. Don't over chop your garnish, so it just keeps it nice and thick. Fresh chopped parsley is really important to freshen it up and give it some colour. I find a lot of people over chop parsley and it gets too fine. By the time they finish chopping it, all the flavour's left on the chopping board, Just a bit of added white pepper, sea salt, and just a little squeeze of lemon juice. So you see how it's still thick? And now, of course, one of the most important things is the batter for the fish. So as mentioned before, my favourite fish to use is flathead. You can't go wrong. You can see how this is nice and shiny. The blood there is lovely and bright red. We keep it on cloths to make sure it's dry. Again, when we dip it in the batter, you want the fish to be nice and dry. So for a bottle of beer, 750ml, we've got about 400 gram of plain flour. For the batter itself, we use Cooper's ale. So it's having the beer, the liquid, really cold. Has a similar effect as the tempura would when you add some ice to the batter to keep it really cold. It crisps up really quickly. You want an ale. You want something with a strong flavour. You wouldn't use a lager or anything like that. I don't think. It's a bit thin and a bit thin in flavour. So if we use a nice fresh beer like we are here, a mistake you could make is just to whisk too hard for too long, and you're just going to knock your bubbles out of the beer. We're trying to keep some bubble in there. So we've cut the flathead into uniform fingers. It's all going to cook at the same time, obviously. Larger flathead will be too big and the batter will cook too quickly, and obviously smaller flathead will just overcook. So dip your flathead in, just give it a good coat, and just lay it in, and just let it start to cook. That's it. You don't need to move it around too much, just let it colour on one side, and then when you think that's ready, just flip it over to finish off the other side. A small piece of fish like that's going to cook in about 3 minutes. So if you don't have a deep fat fry at home, make sure you've got a saucepan that's large enough and not overfilled, because it's very dangerous. You've still got to get it to 180 degrees, so you want that space, so when you drop in your fish, you're not going to get oil on yourself. That's beautiful and crispy and puffed up. We'll season straight away with some nice sea salt. So we've gone for a real rustic approach at the fish shop. We use enamel plates and some greaseproof for our fish and chips, and we like to put our fish on top so you can see it. So my 3 tips for the ultimate fish and chips are: make sure you steam your potatoes until they're just cooked and dry them out really well. Have fresh beer straight from the fridge, nice and cold, and flathead nicely trimmed, all even in size, and not measured, but just so they cook nice and evenly. Okay, so even though we do cook an extremely simple product and serve it in an extremely simple way, I can still apply everything I've learned, everything I believe in, freshness and simplicity. I can still apply all those things that I've done in my other restaurants, i.e. Strode, to this concept. So I think the fish shop really suits this new movement, this trend of the last couple of years of people wanting something really casual, fun, simple, fresh, fast, and really, really good value for money. So the whole vibe of the place, there's a lot of wood. The bar is very wooden with lots of, as you can see, lots of flies and nets and sails and wooden tables, and very simple. It's reminded people of a lot of places. I think it's a mixture of of England and America and New Zealand and Australia, obviously. Yeah, it's definitely different from the fish and chip shops I grew up with, when you walk into a counter and a jar of pickled eggs and sausages fried in batter.